In the US and other countries where the death penalty is legal, last meal requests are a popular subject, as it's customary to give sentenced prisoners a special last meal as per their request. Today's video is going to be very interesting, as we're going to talk about some of the strangest last meal requests on death row. Welcome to 10 Town. Subscribe if you haven't already, click the bell icon, and let's start digging into today's topic. David Leon Woods, along with Greg Sloan and Pat Sweet, went to the home of Juan Placencia in Garrett, Indiana, to steal a television, and Woods was armed with a knife. Sweet stayed in the yard while Woods and Sloan rang the doorbell. When Placencia answered, Woods immediately jumped in and stabbed him with a knife. Later on, he was convicted and issued a death sentence. As per custom, when inquired about what he would like to have as his final meal, he went for a birthday cake. Woods' last meal was the day before his execution. In the summer of 1960, Feguer arrived in Dubuque, Iowa, renting a room at a decrepit boarding house. Soon after arriving, Feguer called Dr. Edward Bartels and requested medical assistance for a woman. When Dr. Bartels arrived, Feguer kidnapped him. Feguer killed Bartels in Illinois with a single gunshot to the head. After his conviction, he was ordered to be hanged, but for his last meal, Feguer did not choose anything fancy. In fact, his request was not even really a meal at all. All he wanted was a single olive with the pit still in it. He told guards he hoped an olive tree would sprout from his grave as a sign of peace. In October 1984, Gardner killed Melvin John Otterstrom during a robbery in Salt Lake City. For his crime, he was executed by firing squad. Although death by firing squad was outlawed in Utah in 2004, the law did not apply to those convicted before that date, so Gardner was allowed to choose it as the method of his execution. Gardner, for his last meal, went for the last meal of steak, lobster tail, apple pie, vanilla ice cream, and 7-Up, before beginning a 48-hour fast while watching the Lord of the Rings film trilogy and reading Divine Justice. Interestingly so, before his execution, he was allowed to finish the trilogy. Diaz was sentenced to death for the murder of Joseph Nagy, a strip club manager who was shot with a silencer-equipped gun when Diaz and two accomplices robbed the Velvet Swing Club on December 22, 1979. Just like his gun, he remained silent when his order for the last meal was being taken. He's the guy who never ordered a last meal and was served a prison menu of shredded turkey with taco seasoning, shredded cheese, rice, pinto beans, tortilla shells, apple crisp, and iced tea, which he turned down. His final statement was, "The state of Florida is killing an innocent person." Lawrence Russel Brewer was convicted for the murder of a black male. Talking about the last meal, he simply made the most advantage of his offer of his last meal request was a triple meat bacon cheeseburger, 3 fajitas, 1 pound of barbecue, half loaf of white bread, meat lover's pizza, 1 pint of Bluebell vanilla ice cream, a slab of peanut butter fudge with crushed peanuts, and 3 root beers. Interestingly, he didn't even take a single bite of it when the order arrived, as a final screw you gesture to the justice system. Another criminal who did not request a normal meal or a feast to enjoy, instead he requested something very dramatic. He requested justice, equality, and world peace as his last meal. Odell Barnes was a Texas man convicted of the 1989 murder of Helen Bass. During the later stages of Barnes' legal appeals, human rights groups and anti-death penalty advocates raised question about Barnes' murder conviction, leading to international media attention and diplomatic protests from the government of France. He was finally executed on March 1st, 2000. A demand for peace and justice coming from a murderer sounds more of like an oxymoron. Robert Alton Harris is an example of not compromising while ordering your final meal on death row, as he ended up ordering a 21-piece bucket of KFC, 2 large Domino pizzas, a 6-pack of Pepsi, ice cream, jelly beans, and a pack of Camel cigarettes. He's remembered for his last words, though, which were, "You can be a king or a street sweeper, but everybody dances with the Grim Reaper." If you've managed to come this far, we surely deserve a thumbs up. John Wayne Gacy was known as the killer clown who assaulted and murdered at least 33 young men and boys. Gacy regularly performed at children's hospitals and charitable events as Pogo the Clown or Patches the Clown. personas that he had devised. He was a regular sex offender as well and committed all his murders to fulfill his sadist desires. Before taking his lethal injection, he made the most of his last meal request as he demanded 12 deep-fried shrimp, bucket of original recipe chicken from KFC, French fries, and a pound of strawberries. He clearly never got tired of the finger-licking goodness KFC offers. Serial killer Aileen Wuornos was sexually abused and thrown out of her home as a teen. Having been involved in previous incidents with the law, she made a living as a sex worker on Florida's highways, and in 1989 she killed a man who had picked her up. She went on to kill at least 5 other men and was eventually caught, convicted, placed on death row. Although her mental condition was questioned, she was executed via lethal injection in 2002. Apparently, she was not very hungry when her last meal request was taken, as she only demanded a cup of coffee. To be fair though, before this request, she had a hamburger and some other snacks at the local prison canteen. The bombing of Alfred P. Moreau Federal Building in Oklahoma City on April 19, 1995, was the deadliest act of homegrown terrorism in U.S. history, resulting in 168 souls lost, including 19 children with several hundred more injured. Timothy James Mcveigh was an American domestic terrorist who carried out this bombing. His last meal consisted of 2 pints of mint chocolate chip ice cream. Given the seriousness of his crime, his last meal request sounds absolutely absurd. Velma Barfield, aka Death Row Granny, was the first woman executed in North Carolina after the death penalty was reinstituted in 1976, and the first woman to die by lethal injection. She was a serial killer who was convicted of 1 murder, but eventually confessed to 6 murders in total. Barfield chose as her last meal 1 bag of Cheetos and 2 8-ounce glass bottles of Coca-Cola, showing that she still had those childish cravings going on. She also released an apologetic statement before her execution. On March 28, 1984, a maintenance man employed at Conklin's apartment complex was collecting aluminum cans from the trash dumpster when he discovered dissected human body parts. Conklin admitted to dissecting the body and disposing of incriminating evidence in the dumpster and was sentenced to death. Just take a look at the feast he managed himself as his last meal: filet mignon wrapped with bacon, deveined shrimp sauteed in garlic butter with lemon, baked potato with butter, sour cream, chives, and real bacon bits, corn on the cob, asparagus with hollandaise sauce, French bread with butter, goat cheese, cantaloupe, apple pie, vanilla bean ice cream, and iced tea. Ray Rector was executed for the 1981 murder of police officer Robert Martin in Conway, Arkansas. After killing a man in a restaurant, he at first agreed to turn himself into authorities, but instead shot the police officer who had negotiated his surrender in the back. For his last meal, Rector requested and received a steak, fried chicken, cherry Kool-Aid, and pecan pie. Rector left the pie on the side of the tray, claiming that he was saving it for later. Slice was not disposed of until Rector's execution. Philip Ray Workman was a death row inmate executed in Tennessee on May 9, 2007. He was convicted in 1982 for the murder of a police officer following a robbery of a Wendy's restaurant in Memphis. He was executed via lethal injection, but his last meal request was more than just something weird or strange. Philip did not want a last meal, rather he requested that a large vegetarian pizza be given to a homeless person in Nashville. The request was put down, and he did not eat anything like his last meal, but the jester brought hundreds of pizzas to homeless shelters on the day of his execution. On the top of our list, we have James Edward Smith's last meal request. The guy must have lost his sane after spending time behind bars, as his last meal he requested was a lump of dirt. His request was put down and was given a cup of yogurt instead. So guys, those were some of the strangest last meal requests on death row. If you like this video, do consider subscribing and hit the like button. That's been it. We'll catch you in the next one.